Welcome back, everybody, and welcome back to another video. Guys, today we are going to be doing our 2025 NFL mock draft. We're doing the whole first round. We are not going to be doing any trades, so every team is going to be picking where they are now. Now, obviously, there's going to be at least one trade in the first round. There's a couple teams on here which we can talk about when we get there, who I could see making a move just based off of the position they might be in. But as of now, we're going to do no trades. We're not going to complicate things. And we're just going to dive right into it. Guys, position rankings. I do have position rankings for each of these players. I did get that from NFLDraftBuzz.com, so that is not my rankings. That is NFLDraftBuzz.com. But guys, super excited. The draft is tomorrow night as I'm recording this. The first round kicks off tomorrow. Super, super excited for this draft. See where these guys go and see what surprises unfold. Obviously we can mock these guys where we think they're going to go, but some team's going to make a surprise pick, like Michael Penix last year going to the Falcons with the 8th overall pick. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened or something shocking. So let's hop into this. And starting off with the first overall pick, I think it's pretty obvious who the Titans are taking. Cam Ward out of Miami. They need a franchise guy. Will Levis is not it. Mason Rudolph, who's not even on the team anymore, is not it. They have not had a franchise quarterback in a long time. The closest thing they came to that was Ryan Tannehill, but that was more of like a couple year, bridge option. But they need a franchise guy. Pro comp, I said this in my quarterback video. I see some Baker Mayfield in him. And I think he could kind of have a similar play style to him. I really like that comparison. And then obviously he's the first ranked quarterback. Some other fits, even though I think there's less than a 5% chance they will take either of these guys, is Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. Although I will just throw that out there. So by the way, when I'm doing this mock draft, I'm actually doing both what I would do, but also what I think the teams will do. I'm kind of mixing together a little bit of both. I think easily the Titans are going to take Cam Ward. I don't really. I think that's kind of guaranteed at this point. It'd be a shock if they didn't. But if I was the Titans GM, to be honest with you, I would be a little split on this. I'd be a little 50-50 because Travis Hunter, in my opinion, is a franchise-changing player. He is the best player in this draft. And I think, there's something to be said about, because I don't know if Cam Ward is a 1-1 type guy, a 1.1 type guy. I think there's something to be said about taking that franchise cornerstone and then, maybe you have a stronger quarterback class next year that you build. But they really like Cam Ward. I'm sure they'll take their guy first overall. But coming in second overall to the Cleveland Browns, we have Travis Hunter, drafted out of Colorado. I mean, the Browns are in a perfect position here in this draft. I really don't think they necessarily want Cam Ward, or I shouldn't say that. Obviously, if Travis Hunter goes first overall, they would be ecstatic to get Cam Ward in their hands at pick number 2. But I think that they would rather take Travis Hunter, and they get to get him at the second overall pick. They get to have a franchise-altering player with the second overall pick. And this is just a guy that's going to be able to, the Browns see him as a receiver, so if he gets drafted to Cleveland, he'll probably be their wide receiver 1. I think he'd already be better than Jerry Jeudy. But this is a guy who can give you value on both sides of the field, ranked first in this class, for wide receivers and corners. And this is a guy who can, for a impoverished franchise, a franchise who's been a laughingstock even recently, even when we thought they were turning a corner, they're back to being this laughingstock of a team. And I think this is a player that you can get here that can just change that can change the momentum for them. And I think you get a solid starting quarterback who's not a sexual predator. And I think that you have a very good team going forward. So would be a huge pick for Cleveland. And I really don't see why they would ever take Abdul Carter. I mean, sure, the other fits are Abdul Carter and Cam Ward, but I don't really see why they would take anyone else if Travis Hunter's on the board. He is by far the best player in this draft. With the third overall pick, I have the New York Giants taking Abdul Carter out of Penn State. I think this top 3 is a little bit more locked in than people think. The Giants could do something kind of crazy here and switch things up. The one thing about this fit is it's not necessarily like a textbook fit for the Giants. They probably would rather be there with the second overall pick to take Travis Hunter. But at this point, Abdul Carter is just the best player available. You got to grab talent where you can grab talent. It really makes no sense for them to take Shedeur Sanders third overall. Now, maybe later in the first I could see that, or in the second. But third overall, I think, is way too much of a reach, especially when you talk about what this year means for the Giants, the signings they've made in the offseason. It just wouldn't make any sense. Them signing Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Brian DeBull kind of being on the hot seat there in New York. It would just make no sense to draft a quarterback that you might not even start third overall, right? In a make or break year. So I think you take the best talent available. That's going to be Abdul Carter. Now the fit isn't, like I said, it's not textbook. You basically, literally his pro comp I have is Brian Burns. He's basically another Brian Burns, who you already have on the other end. So, you have two thinner edge rushers, not necessarily, especially going up against the Eagles twice a year, not necessarily the best thing to have with a run defense, in terms of stopping the run, I should say. So, the fit isn't that awesome, but I think you can figure it out. I mean, come on, just take the talent that's there. You got Dexter Lawrence in the middle who's going to eat up anything that goes through the middle, and you just have to figure out the edge. I think you just take the best player available. I don't really think the fit matters too much here. With the fourth overall pick, the New England Patriots select Armand Membu. Now, I know a lot of people have Will Campbell mocked here. I know a lot of people... some people are saying Ashton Jeanty might go here. I think it's a mix between, I could honestly see Jeanty going here, but I think they're going to take an offensive lineman. I think it's either going to be Will Campbell or Amon Membu. This is kind of where, what I would do kind of mixes in here. I like Membu better. I think he's my favorite offensive lineman in this draft. The dude is just a monster. He plays violently when you watch him play on tape. And I think the Patriots, need somebody like that to protect Drake May and push the run game. He is a tackle out of Missouri, and obviously, just beef up that offensive line. And some other fits, obviously Will Campbell, maybe if Abdul Carter somehow falls into their laps, depending on what the Giants do. And honestly, going back to this, I could see the Giants trading out of this pick, just because it's kind of a weird situation for them. They'd either take the best player available or they would just trade out of it. Okay, guys, with the fifth overall pick, I have the Jaguars taking Mason Graham out of Michigan. I could also see this being a team that takes Jeanty. The 4-5-6 turn is going to be a little interesting, just with, seeing if they're going to take Jeanty, Patriots, Jaguars, or if he's going to fall into the Raiders' lap. With all the hype surrounding him in this draft, I really don't think he's going to fall past. I know some Bears fans are hopeful that they'll get him at pick 10. Maybe if the Bears trade up, but I really don't think Jeanty's lasting past pick 6. I think him going with the 6th overall pick is going to be that floor. But I do think the Jaguars will take Mason Graham. Just complete a terrifying defensive front. You don't have to worry about that, right? You have Josh Allen Hines. You have some really capable edge rushers that you've been drafting throughout the years. And now you just complete the trenches with Mason Graham, who's, I think, the best inside defensive lineman in this draft. He's not the flashiest. He's not he's not that flashy type of player. Doesn't really jump out on tape, but he does everything right, and he's very good at his position. Very good at stopping the run. Obviously, I have him as the first, or NFL Draft Buzz has him ranked as the first defensive tackle. I have him there as well. Some other fits as well as Ashton Jeanty. You got T-Mac and you got Tyler Warren. I could also see them taking here. The Jaguars are kind of wild card team right here because they could either, jump on their needs on offense, or they could take who I think is the best player available, other than Ashton Jeanty, with Mason Graham, but just a very important position at defensive tackle. I think the Jaguars go here. I think they should go here. But coming in at the 6th overall pick, I have the Raiders taking Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State. Kind of spoiled it in the last pick, right? I think this is his floor. I don't think he's going past this point. And the reason's pretty simple. This dude can transcend this offense into a new tier. This Raiders offense, who's just been kind of whatever to horrible, the past couple years. I think that he can change that. You know, they got Geno Smith, who, you know, I'm not a huge fan of that because I don't think that's your answer at quarterback, but it is better than what they've had, than what they've been trending. And now you get Ashton Genty, who can be that superstar for you in the run game, which they have not had since Josh Jacobs. So, you know, the pro comp, another Boise State alum, Doug Martin, but he's like a supercharged Doug Martin. He's not Doug Martin, right? Just has a similar build, similar play style, honestly. And he went to Boise State, so that makes it easy. But some other fits here, they could go T-Mac, right, if they want to give Geno Smith some more options, or they could draft Mason Graham if he's still available. I do like that fit. Him getting paired up with Max Crosby there, that'd be terrifying. Coming in at the 7th overall pick, I have the New York Jets taking Tyler Warren out of Penn State. Yeah, they could go Will Campbell, and I could see them doing that. You know, I think you have Campbell going 4th, Membu going 7th, or you could have it vice versa. But I actually have the Jets taking a playmaker here for Justin Fields. You know, they lost Devontae Adams in the offseason after having him for like half a season. Tyler Warren, an elite playmaker, definitely the best tight end in this draft, and a very, very special talent. Yes, he is going above Brock Bowers here, but I do think it's a different draft. I think it's a different talent pool. And I think if you're the Jets here, I think you just take that playmaker, and then you can draft offensive linemen in the 2nd round, 3rd round. Some other fits, obviously, like I said, Membu or Will Campbell, but I already have the Patriots taking Membu. But Armand Membu would be a great fit for the Jets. I just like Tyler Warren here over Will Campbell. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I am kind of making, I guess, a hot take here. I don't know if it's a hot take or not, but I do have Will Campbell sliding more than people will think. I think that teams are going to overreact to the arm length thing. I know it's not that big of a deal, but I do think teams are going to overreact to that, and I think he'll slide a little bit. You'll see where I have him actually getting picked. With the 8th overall pick, I have the Panthers taking T-Mac. Okay, so I was kind of going back and forth. They're either going to go defense, right, and get a linebacker like Jalen Walker. I know a lot of people are mocking him here at 8th overall. But I think they should go offense. And the reason being is because you just saw Bryce Young start to play better towards the end of his 2nd year. There's still hope with him, and he gave you hope because, you know, his play, like I said, towards the end of his sophomore year, even before the end, like I want to say right before the halfway mark, his play started to look really promising. So I think you build on that, right? I don't think you go away from that. Now, is there going to be a lot of talent in the 2nd round for receiver? Yes, there will be. I think there'll be a lot of strong talent. They could go Luther Bird in there, who I think would be a great fit. If he's in the 2nd round, they could go Egbuka if he falls somehow, right? But I don't know. To me, I think you take the best receiver in this draft. Give Bryce Young a good option, a safe option, a guy who just makes it look easy, great footwork, great fundamentals, and great hands. I think you take T-Mac here. Now, I did say in my wide receiver video, I do think Matthew Golden is the better receiver in my personal opinion, but I do think T-Mac is a better fit here in Carolina. And I haven't really seen Carolina too interested in Golden or making that connection. So T-Mac out of Arizona, right? Pro comp, he kind of reminds me a little bit of T. Higgins. I don't think he's as athletic as T. Higgins, but similar kind of frame. Some other fits there. Obviously, like I said, Jalen Walker is a huge one there. I do like Jahdae Barron as well, but I think, like I said, go offense here. Get Bryce Young some good options. I wouldn't even be mad if they took Tyler Warren here if he was available. That honestly wouldn't be a bad pick either. I don't really see that too much, but get Bryce Young a playmaker. Keep building off that momentum from the sophomore year. With the 9th overall pick, I have the Saints taking Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. This dude is a beast. You know, I know there's some attitude issues or concerns, I should say. I don't really think that matters. We see defensive tackles like this all the time, right? That have that, who work out. Jalen Carter, who went to the Eagles, became a beast. Ed Oliver, who went to the Bills, became a beast. I feel like there's always one in every draft that people are concerned about their attitude, then they just become a beast, right? Walter Nolan's a great prospect, right there with Mason Graham, honestly, out of Ole Miss. And with the Saints, I just think, you know, I think Shedeur Sanders at 9th overall is just way too early. For the type of ceiling that Sanders has, I think it's too early to take him there. I do think they have other needs that they should address first. Now, if you got Jackson Dart, who actually would be a great fit in Kellen Moore's offense, if you get Jackson Dart in the second round, take him, pull that trigger. For sure. I think that's a good fit, especially when you're looking at Derek Carr possibly missing the entire year, probably missing the entire season. Pull that trigger. But Shador at 9, I don't think is it. If Shador's in the second round, definitely pull that trigger as well. T-Mac would be a good option here as well if he's still on the board. Get some receiving options, but I think you should address some of your defensive questions here, and Walter Nolan would be a great pick, just best player available type pick here, because I think a lot of teams will be interested in him in the first round. Coming in, okay, so I told you Will Campbell was sliding, so the 10th overall pick, I have the Bears taking Campbell. I think this is a great fit out of LSU, and they would be ecstatic, honestly, if this guy was still on the board at this point in the draft. Reason's pretty simple, right? They made some big acquisitions in the offseason, adding to their offensive line, trades, signings. Keep adding. Why not? Right? When that offensive line last year was so awful, it was actually really embarrassing for them. So I think you got to protect Caleb Williams. You can't turn him into the next freaking David Carr. Keep protecting him. Just keep adding while you can. Especially if a guy like this is still available on the board. I think it's a pretty easy pick for them. Pro comp I have is Garrett. There's a little bit of Garrett Bowles in him, right? And some other fits, if they're still there, Tyler Warren, Ashton Genty, obviously. But in this draft, they are definitely taken. And I think if the Bears want to get Genty, if they really want him, they're going to have to trade up, in my opinion. With the 11th overall pick, I have the 49ers taking Jahdae Barron, corner out of Texas. And there's a couple, issues they could address here in the offseason, especially after a disappointing year last year. But I think the secondary is a good place to start, especially if Jahdae Barron, who is the best corner in this draft, in my opinion, especially if he's still on the board. I think you address that first. They could go Walter Nolan if he's still there. They could go Membu if he's still there. But I like Jahdae Barron because you lost, some key guys in the offseason. You lost Hufanga. You lost Travarius Ward. So add to that secondary, fill in those gaps. And secondary is obviously a very, very important position in the NFL. So I think the 49ers should and will go Jahdae Barron here if he's still available. And with the 12th overall pick, we have another Texas Longhorn with Matthew Golden going to the Dallas Cowboys. I said in my wide receiver video, if you guys watch that, the fit is just too nice. I'm going to be mocking this every single time, no matter what. Matthew Golden to the Cowboys is just a perfect fit, right? Went to Texas. I mean, even the name, I could just see Matthew Golden on a Cowboys jersey, right? I could see Golden on the back. And he's just a perfect fit. Perfect wide receiver, too, to CeeDee Lamb. And obviously the other fits I have for them is T-Mac and Luther Burden. Just they need to give Dak some options. They need to give him some type of help outside of CD. CD can't do everything. If Genty's still here, obviously you go Genty, but I don't think there's any way in hell that Genty's going to last past, like I said, pick 6, let alone going all the way to 12th overall. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys made a big move trading up, especially since they've been so quiet last offseason and, a little bit this offseason too. So I wouldn't be surprised if they made a big move like that to get Genty, to get their guy. Some people are saying they could go Marion Hampton here. I think you should go receiver. And then maybe, you did sign Javonte Williams, who isn't a splash signing whatsoever, but, maybe see how that works out. And like I said, there's going to be so many running backs. I said this in my running backs video. There's going to be so many running backs in the second and third round that are just going to be fucking solid. Like, this is such a deep running back class. You do not need to go running back or force a Marion Hampton right here at 12th overall when you can snag a guy like Caleb Johnson or Quinshaw Judkins in the second or third round. I mean, it doesn't make sense. So with the 13th overall pick, we have the Dolphins taking Will Johnson out of Michigan. Just get a guy, backup plan for Ramsey, right? Secondary was a little toast last year, so get a guy who can help solidify that. Very good talent. A lot of potential here. Pro comp, I gave him Christian Gonzalez. And obviously some other fits. They could go corner if Will Johnson's taking, or if Jahdae Barron's still on the board and they like him better, they could go Jahdae Barron. They could also go Kelvin Banks Jr. A lot of people are mocking him there to solidify that offensive line, but I think Will Johnson would be a good fit for them if he's still on the board here at 13th overall. And then it's funny because we actually just went back-to-back Longhorns. We're going to go back-to-back Wolverines here with Colston Loveland going to the Colts, 14th overall out of Michigan. Obviously, a lot of people are mocking Tyler Warren to the Colts right here at 14th. And then Colston Loveland, 22nd overall to the Chargers, right? Because that's Harbaugh's boy. It'd be a perfect fit. But in my opinion, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's a little too perfect. But I do think the Colts need a tight end really bad. They need another weapon for Anthony Richardson. At least give him a chance to see if he has what it takes, right? Or Daniel Jones, whoever's starting next year. But Colston Loveland can be that Evan Ingram type tight end. They need another weapon. They need a tight end really bad. It's just perfect. I think you take whoever, unless Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren are somehow off the board at 14. I think you take one of those two guys. And I'm sure they're hoping they get Tyler Warren just because he is the better prospect. But Colston Loveland's a great prospect as well. Obviously, Tyler Warren. They could also go Jahad Campbell. They could go defense. But I have them taking Loveland here at 14th overall. With the 15th overall pick, I have the Falcons taking Jahad Campbell out of Alabama. I think he's a better fit for the defense, much more versatile. I think he's a good captain that they can draft to start a new era for this defense, right? Pro comp I have is Jamie Collins, and some other fits that go Mike Green on the edge. I could see that fit. They could also go Jalen Walker, right? I do think they'll take either Jahad Campbell or Jalen Walker, whoever's available. Jalen Walker could just go 8th overall to the Panthers. These linebackers, and I feel like it's kind of the case all the time with linebackers in drafts, they could go anywhere from like top 5 or top 10 to the bottom of the first round. It just really depends on what teams are picking, because most of the time teams are picking, the interior, right? They're picking the offensive line, they're picking the defensive line, they're picking quarterbacks, they're picking receivers. So sometimes those guys fall. I think Jahad Campbell and Jalen Walker are both great talents. I think they're both neck and neck for me in terms of talent. I just like the fit with Campbell going to Atlanta a little better. I think he'll change this defense. With the 16th overall pick, I think the Cardinals go Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. Just keep solidifying the offensive line, right? Keep adding to it. I think they take whoever is the best offensive lineman still on the board, which in my opinion is Josh Simmons at this point. Pro comp I have is DJ Humphries, believe it or not. And some other fits, they could go Walter Nolan. I actually really like that fit as well on the defensive line, or Will Johnson. They could add some pieces to that secondary, but I think they go offensive line here. I think they pick Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. Great fit for them. And pretty simple. With the 17th overall pick, I have the Bengals taking Jalen Walker out of Georgia. He could be their defensive captain, kind of like a bigger Nick Bonito, right? Is a comp I have for him. And like I said, him and Jahad Campbell, neck and neck in talent, both very talented linebackers. And it could go either way, right? Jalen Walker could go to Atlanta. Jahad Campbell could go to the Bengals here at 17th. But I do think the Bengals, with their first overall pick, no matter what, they need to take a defensive player. Walter Nolan, Jahad Campbell's, and some other fits for them. They need to take a defensive player, whether that's a linebacker, interior, edge, whatever, because they might lose Trey Hendrickson. Hopefully they don't, but hopefully they do as a Ravens fan. But they have to go defense. That defense last year was atrocious. So I think Jalen Walker would be an awesome addition for their defense, a guy who could become a star for them on that end of the field. With the 18th overall pick, we have the Seahawks picking Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. And same thing with the Cardinals, right? But even more for the Seahawks. I think if you're the Seahawks, you take whoever is still the best offensive lineman on the board. The Seahawks need to take. They were not doing their running backs any favors last year. This offensive line wasn't good. Now you added Sam Darnold. Let's beef up that offensive line. Get Kelvin Banks in here out of Texas. I think it's a good fit, and he's the best offensive lineman still on the board, in my opinion. Some other fits, they could go Gray Zabel, another good offensive lineman in this draft, or Donovan Ezaraku to fill up that edge. But I think Kelvin Banks Jr. is a good fit here at 18th overall. With the 19th overall pick, I have the Buccaneers taking Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. That secondary last year was Swiss cheese, my friend. And I think that if they add some help in the secondary, whether that's Trey Amos, I have seen, Ravel. I have seen Ravel mocked here before, and I do like that fit as well. I was kind of going back and forth, but I do like Amos here at 19th overall. I could see them taking either or. But he is the 6th ranked corner according to Draft Buzz. I'm not really concerned about that. He's kind of all over the place depending on who you look at, right? Some other fits here for them. They could go Jahad Campbell. I actually really like that fit as well, or Ezaraku on the edge. With the 20th overall pick, I have the Broncos taking their running back, Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. Another first-round North Carolina running back for them, but hopefully this time it works out a little better. This could be an awesome 1-2 attack with Bo Nix, right, to solidify their offense next year. See a little bit of Joe Mixon in him. You get the second best running back in this draft, which is a very, very good running back class. And you just don't risk another team trading up or taking him later in the first round. Take your guy here. I've seen Travion Henderson mocked here before, which is kind of interesting. It is definitely a Sean Payton type pick, but I think that's a little too early for him. I think Omarion Hampton is a safe pick here at 20th overall. Some other fits, though, they could go receiver with Luther Burden or Emeka Egbuka here at number 20. And here we go. So I have Shedeur Sanders going 21st overall to the Steelers. Now, like I said, I'm making this video before the first round, which is tomorrow night. And unless anything happens in the next 40-ish hours, 30 hours, they have to go quarterback at some point. Maybe it's not here, right? Maybe they play it smart and wait. But I know the Steelers, they're just the type of team to just pull the trigger right here in the first round on the best quarterback available, right, which is Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. Now, obviously, this is a low ceiling, high floor quarterback, which maybe that's what they need right now. In my opinion, the Steelers, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a Ravens fan, the Steelers cannot develop quarterbacks whatsoever. They can not develop quarterbacks to save their life. So I think he'd have a Geno Smith type ceiling, which is still like that's still good, right? You saw Geno Smith just get the bag from Las Vegas, but I just don't love the fit. But I can see this happening. That's what I'm trying to say here, I guess. Some other fits, they could go Jackson Dart if Shedeur Sanders is already off the board, if they really want their guy there in the first round. Or they could go Walter Nolan, which would be a great pick for them. Even Derek Harmon out of Oregon would be a good pick for them at this point. But I could see them going quarterback here at 21st overall, especially if Sanders is still on the board. 22nd overall pick, I have the Chargers taking Harbaugh's boy, Kenneth Grant, right? So we talked about it earlier. They don't get their man in Colston Loveland out of Michigan. But, hey, you still have another Wolverine still on the board who is one of the best players available at this point. Take your guy, Kenneth Grant. It is a position need for the Chargers. And, obviously, he went to Michigan, played for John Harbaugh. Pro comp, Travis Jones, good comp for him. And some other fits here. If Loveland's still available, you could take him. Or you could take Egbuka out of Ohio State. Get Justin Herbert, another good option. But this is a good pick in the first round. And then maybe you go receiver in the second round, right? Some of those guys are still available. So I think this is a fantastic pick for them. And one I could definitely see them doing if Loveland's off the board. Maybe even if Loveland's on the board, they could go Kenneth Grant if they feel like they have that as a need more. But I think they go one of those two guys, to be honest with you. With the 23rd overall pick, I have the Packers taking Donovan Ezaraku out of Boston College. I think this is such a Packers pick. I was going to mock them a receiver here. I think Egbuka would be a good mock for them, but come on, it's the Packers. They're not taking a freaking receiver in the first round. That would just be unrealistic. But I do think I could very well see them taking Ezaraku. He's such a Packers-type pick. Just kind of from a more unknown school, but great athlete, a little bit undersized, right? But they see potential in him. And yeah, you see Draft Buzz having him as the 10th ranked defensive end. I think that's a little disrespectful. I think Ezraku is a much better talent than that. Some other fits, they could go Walter Nolan, which I really don't see them doing, or Egbuka, like I said here. What they'll probably end up doing is they'll take a guy like Ezraku or something like that in the first round, and then they'll probably take Jaden Higgins either in the second or third round. Jaden Higgins is such a Packers-type receiver out of Iowa State. I could very well see them doing that. Coming in with the 24th overall pick, I have the Vikings taking Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. I really didn't know who to put here. Malachi Starks isn't a bad pick. Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame, not a bad pick. You know, they just lost their boy in the offseason. I'm blanking on his name right now. Bynum. They just lost Bynum in the offseason, so they could pick up another safety. I think they go offensive line here. Why not? You know, you had the injuries last year. And Gray Zabel is a great prospect out of North Dakota State, and he just seems like a Vikings-type player. Like I said, they could go Malachi Starks, even Kenneth Grant if he's still on the board for a defensive lineman. But I really just don't know what direction the Vikings are going to go here at the 24th pick. Wouldn't be surprised if they trade back. In fact, they probably won't even have this pick because the Vikings have like 4 picks in this entire draft, which is absurd. So they'll probably trade back and just pick up, you know, some good late round picks, especially in a draft where you don't really have a whole lot of top end talent, but it is a deep class, right? In the second, third round, those day 2 picks are going to be valuable. So I could very well see them not having this pick when it comes to draft night. But if they do, wouldn't be surprised if they took a guy like Zabel. It's funny, if you look on, when you do the mock draft simulator on Pro Football Focus, or PFF, PFF, they say positional needs, they have running back there, which is just ridiculous. I don't really know why they would need a running back. And even some people are picking a running back here. That just makes no sense. They do not need a running back. They just got Jordan Mason and they have Aaron Jones. With the 25th overall pick, we have another lineman going here in the first round, Josh Connerly Jr. I think the Texans should take an offensive lineman. They might go receiver, but I think lineman makes the most sense. If Josh Simmons or Kelvin Banks Jr. is on the board, they'd be a great fit for this team as well. But Josh Connerly Jr. is still a great talent, probably going to go in the first round, maybe even later, maybe later than this at his floor, but I think he'll still be a first-round pick. But yeah, just beef up that offensive line, protect C.J. Stroud. Paris Johnson Jr. is honestly a good comp for him, but I think it makes sense for the Texans to go offensive line at this point. With the 26th overall pick, I have the Rams taking Carson Schwechsinger. I think that's how you say it. And let me tell you, I know this is a little early for him. I think he's like a day 2 pick in most people's eyes. But I do think it's a huge need for them. They could take the local kid out of UCLA. They need a linebacker. I think he's a very talented linebacker, very underrated in this draft class. And yeah, it's a huge need for this defense that's super young but very talented and played really, really surprisingly well last year. Blake Cashman is a good comp for him. And they could go Loveland here if he's still on the board. Great fit as well. Get that tight end for Matthew Stafford or Josh Simmons, offensive lineman. But why not just pull the trigger on your guy? They could trade back. It kind of puts them in a weird position. I wouldn't be surprised if they went corner too. They could go Ravel or Trey Amos if he's still here. But I like this pick, and I'm sticking with it. With the 27th overall pick, we have the Ravens drafting James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. The fit is just perfect. I mean, some character concerns for James Pierce. I don't really think that's going to matter too much. I think the Ravens, this would be a perfect pick for them at this position in the draft. Can rush the passer, has that kind of frame that the Ravens like in their defensive ends, and he can drop back and cover. I mean, he's just a perfect fit at that point. Some other fits, Donovan Ezraku I don't like as much, and Malachi Starks I don't like as much either. I think James Pierce Jr., as a Ravens fan, that's who I'm gunning for here at 27th overall. And obviously, if some of these guys are still on the board, at that point, I don't even know who, though. I really don't. I think James Pierce is just such a good pick. I mean, maybe you go Jahad Campbell or Jalen Walker if somehow they're still there, but I highly doubt that's going to happen. James Pierce Jr. is just such a perfect pick for them. But with the 28th overall pick, I mean, the Lions would be so happy if this ended up happening. I could very well see the Lions trading up in this draft to draft a edge player. It is a huge need for them right now, and that they just need to keep adding to that defense, right? But Mike Green out of Marshall played at a small school. Doesn't really matter though. He's so talented. They could go James Pierce here if he's still on the board and they like him better, or if Mike Green's already taken, or Nick Scourton out of Texas A&M. But I like Mike Green here to the Lions. I think it's a perfect fit, and they would be so happy if he just fell into their lap right here at 28th overall. Like I said, though, could see them trading up to make sure they get their guy. Maybe 24th overall to the Vikings, right? There's so many edge rushers in this draft that they might feel safe going up to 24th overall and still getting a good talent. So, but so far, the way that I have it all stacked up, he falls right into their laps here at 28th overall. But with the 29th overall pick, I have the Commanders taking Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. Super speedy corner, right? Really, really, really good player. Some people have him as a day 2 pick. I have him going 29th overall as the Commanders. I'm a little higher on him than most people, right? Obviously, you see Draft Buzz has him ranked 8th, the 8th best corner in this draft. I have him a little higher. They could go Marion Hampton here, who'd also be a great pick for them, or James Pierce Jr., get an edge player, but I have them filling out their secondary here and just solidifying that defense a little bit. With the 30th overall pick, I have the Bills taking Derek Harmon out of Oregon. This is just such a perfect pick for them. I know a lot of people aren't thinking defensive tackle. They might go, they could go receiver. They could go any. They could also go secondary. I mean, secondary would be a good fit for them. If they don't go Derek Harmon, who I just think is a perfect fit. I mean, you saw them not really be able to stop the run in the AFC Championship against the Chiefs, right? It was a little bit of a struggle. They got ran over by Derrick Henry earlier in the season. Draft this guy. He's a perfect fit. Put him right there next to Ed Oliver, and he's just going to be a disruptor on that defense. Pro comp I have for him is Muhammad Wilkerson. Derek Harmon, great fit, great talent at that point in the draft. Not a guy you'd want to see to fall into their hands, right, with how good the Bills played last season. But Trey Amos is another good fit here. Nick Scourton on the edge. But if they don't do Derek Harmon, or if he's already picked, they have to go secondary just with the injuries they had last year and losing some guys. But with the 31st overall pick, I have the Chiefs taking Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. This mock draft didn't really work out the best for the Chiefs, just because they probably were hoping to get a better guy than Donovan Jackson, but still a great talent. I just think the Chiefs are going to take the best offensive lineman, or at least they should take the best offensive lineman that's still on the board by the time that they're drafting, which in this case I think is Donovan Jackson. But like I said, they could go Josh Connerly Jr. I've seen him mocked there plenty, or Gray Zabel. But like I said, they have to go offensive linemen, and I think the way that this draft is stacked up for them, they'd be a little disappointed. I don't think that many offensive linemen will be picked in front in the actual draft, but at least for my mock draft, I have the best player available, Donovan Jackson, right? And then last but not least, with the 32nd overall pick, man, this would just be a nightmare. And I really don't like the way that this draft is shaping up, because you have so many talented edge rushers that can go in the first round. But I think teams are going to, the way that at least I have this mock draft, you still have guys like Nick Scourton. You have his teammate Shamar Stewart still available. You have some scary dudes still on the board by the point that the Eagles are picking, and they really don't have a huge positional need. They'll probably just go defensive end and add another monster on that defense, right? Out of Texas A&M, just great talent. They're just going to pick whoever is the best talent on the board still, which I think is going to be really deep, because they're starting to pick into that day 2 range, which is where this draft class gets really deep. So this is not good for the rest of the NFL. But some other fits, they could go James Pierce Jr., who would be terrifying. Michael Williams, who would also be terrifying. But here I have him going Scourton. I like him a little better than Michael Williams. But guys, that is my 2025 mock draft. Please let me know what you guys think. Mock drafts are so much fun. Drafts in general are just so much fun. And I can't wait to see who is the surprising pick tomorrow night. Let me know in the comments, who do you guys think is going to be picked, in surprising fashion. And let me know what you guys agree with, what you disagree with. Love doing these mock drafts. Who's going to be your top 3 picks, whatever. Draft time is so much fun, guys. Thank you so much for the support. Please subscribe if you like this type of content. Leave a like, and I'll see you guys after the draft. This is my last video before at least day 1. So I'll see you guys after. We'll do some recaps, and yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. But thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys later. Peace.